Good evening. I'm District Secretary Nancy Campbell Hatfield. It is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015, and this is a special meeting of the Dublin Sierra Mountain Services District Board of Directors. Presiding this evening is President Ed Duarte.
Call the meeting to order. Would you join me with the flag? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Director Bonham,
Here.
Director Halkett,
Here.
Vice President Howard,
Here.
President Duarte.
Here.
Thank you.
Public comment. This time we'll entertain any people in the audience that would like to address the board on any item of interest that's within the subject matter of jurisdiction of the board. It's not already included on tonight's agenda. Speakers, then we'll move on to the agenda or business.
Yeah, if you want to do some agenda management.
We need to add an agenda item regarding anticipated litigation. So I will have a motion to add a closed session of conference of the district's council concerning a significant exposure to litigation. So moved. Second?
President Duarte, before the vote is taken, may I just note for the record that this is based upon a matter which arose within about the last 90 minutes, and therefore it is appropriate for the board, if there are 4 affirmative votes, to take it up in closed session.
4 votes are needed for both the board to determine that immediate action is necessary because of the new information. All in favor of the motion? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. The attendees in both closed sessions will be the 4 board members. Director Benson has recused herself. Carl Nelson, General Counsel. Robert Maddow, Assistant General Counsel. Administrative Services Manager Archer. Operations Manager Gallagher. Engineering Manager McIntyre. And General Manager Burton-Calvert.
Well, that's why the votes came up after the yeah. So they can do that.
I know. Who doesn't belong in this place? Livermore's a diet.
Close mic, I wouldn't sit right in front of it. Not private here. 553.
So this is a continuation of the special board meeting of March 3rd, 2015 for the Dublin Sierra Mountain Services District Board of Directors, and the meeting will continue. President Duarte.
There is nothing to report in closed session. Moving on to board business. 5A.
Thank you, President Duarte and members of the board. Our first item for you to consider tonight is an environmental document filing for the proposed water transfer and wheeling through East Bay Line. There is a notice of determination that is part of the agenda package that has been prepared for you to consider tonight, and I'd like to ask Council Maddow to explain the exemptions that are noted on that.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. President Duarte, members of the board, the recommendation that is before you has to do with a very limited slice of all of the facilities and activities that are related to this transaction. As the board members know, part of this is the district's purchase of water from the Yuba County Water Agency, water that can be made available by Yuba pursuant to something called the Yuba Accord, as it has been amended as recently as within the last 12 months. And the Yuba Accord is probably about as completely documented, permitted, and eventually approved water matters that I've been familiar with in a very long time. Suffice it to say that what this project would do would be to take advantage of existing facilities that Yuba has constructed and existing regulatory approvals that Yuba has obtained that enable it to transfer this water to DSRSD. The water would then be collected at an authorized point of diversion for that water, which is the East Bay Municipal Utility District intake at Freeport up on the Sacramento River, up in the city of Sacramento. The Freeport facility is another fully documented, permitted, and approved matter. And so what is before the board now is the question of taking the water at the turnouts where it will be made available through the mechanisms that have previously been environmentally documented, permits approved, etc. And you are going to be taking water, if all of these matters are approved, through existing facilities, and there is therefore a categorical exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act that is available to you, which will prevent you from having to go further in environmental documentation. Similarly, the Environmental Quality Act has a statutory exemption that deals with measures necessary to mitigate an emergency. And in this instance, there are a number of declarations of emergency that are in place, including a declaration and an extended declaration by the governor of the state of California, declaration by the Zone 7 Water Agency, and of course the declaration that this board made and extended, and the statutory exemption that is available enables you to say that we will bring ourselves under that exemption and need not do any further environmental documentation for this action that is intended to help the district mitigate that emergency. I'd be happy to answer any questions. The words on the paper are, there are a lot of them, but it basically boils down, I think, to what I just tried to explain. Thank you.
If there any public comment that would like to be, please feel free to come to the lecture. Identify yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jill Dury, General Manager of Zone 7. And while we have no specific objections or comments on the CEQA analysis, we, as Mr. Gallagher and Mr. Maddow both said, this is a package of several items that are being bundled together this evening. And we did want to go on record as objecting in general to the transfer and import of water from the Yuba Accord by way of the East Bay Mud Wheeling Agreement. And I will be repeating that each time, but keeping this short since you already have our letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to? Seeing no further. Call for approval by resolution.
I move to approve the resolution.
I'll second.
And moved and seconded to approve the resolution. Item 5A, the CEQA notice of exemption. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Item 5B.
Thank you, President Duarte, members of the board. Item 5B is a proposed water purchase agreement between DSRSD and Yuba County Water Agency for the purchase of 1,500 acre-feet of transfer water. I would like to point out a couple of things. In front of you, you should have a revised resolution for this particular item. Essentially, we added a little bit more detail to a number of the recitals today, so This resolution is very similar, but with updated recitals. Also, I wanted to mention that the agenda package inadvertently didn't include a copy of the actual Yuba County agreement, but it is the same as what you have seen before. We provided a copy of this for you previously, so it has not changed in the last couple of weeks. So this item, if you approve the resolution, authorizes the general manager to execute this contract or this agreement, water purchase agreement with Yuba County.
Questions, comments? Again, anyone in the audience who would like to comment?
President Duarte, again, I apologize for redundancy, but I do want to go on record as Zone 7 strongly objecting to this item of Yuba water acquisition. We feel it violates the contract between Zone 7 and DSRSD. More than that, by the urgency and the quickness with which this is being considered and lack of meetings and open, transparent discussions between the staff to completely analyze the impacts of DSRSD's actions on the rest of the valley. We feel that it's doing an injustice to the process and circumventing certain steps in the governor's policy, which is to conserve during this emergency rather than to try to acquire additional waters. Thank you.
Anyone else care to comment? Seeing no further comments? Motion to approve the resolution, excuse me.
I'll move we approve the resolution.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the resolution, item 5B, the water purchase agreement.
You want to make sure that you reference
The new resolution, yeah, the new resolution that was passed to us tonight. 5E.
and my second applies to the new.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5C, the Warren Act contract.
Thank you, President Duarte, members of the board. This next item is for a Warren Act contract between DSRSD and the United States Bureau of Reclamation. This is necessary because for this water transfer, the water will be conveyed from the eastern Freeport facilities through the South Folsom South Canal. And that is a federal facility, so therefore we need to have a Warren Act contract in order to use that canal to move our water between the Freeport facilities and the McCollum operators. This contract has not actually been prepared yet. The U.S. Bureau of Reclamation will prepare that in the coming weeks. So what you have in your package is a sample, just so you can see what one of these contracts will look like. The resolution we have before you tonight, and by the way, this one has also been revised. All three of these resolutions that you're looking at for 5B, 5C, and 5D all have identical recitals now, so the recitals have been updated. So the resolution authorizes the general manager to execute a Warren Act contract when it is ready for us to use.
Comments, questions? Public comment.
Again, I reference our letter. I'm just going on record as opposing this action as with the others. And I'll keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the resolution for the Warren Act contract with the revised resolution.
I'll make the motion. As revised. I see.
You second it.
I'll second the motion. Second the motion. I'll second the motion, and I have a question for Ms. Brown. In your opinion, any risk with the pro forma contract attached to this? I'm assuming this is a fairly standard agreement for this type of transfer.
It is, Director Halcutt. Warren Act contracts are required any time non-federal water is moved through a federal facility. And as Mr. Gallagher noted, that there is a relatively cut and dried format which is reflected in the example that was provided. The Bureau has a number of internal review things which it must go through under the various and sundry statutory and regulatory things that are applicable to its decisions. They have no reason to suspect that anything about this transaction would require anything materially different from what we see in that sample. If in fact there is something that should occur that the general manager in consultation with our office concludes is a substantial change from the pattern that is demonstrated in the agenda item, we would come back to the board, but I would be very surprised if that proves to be necessary.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Item 5D, the wheeling.
All right, thank you once again, President, marching members of the board. Item 5D is the proposed wheeling agreement between DSRSD and East Bay Mud to actually move the transfer water, and this transfer water would be taken at the Freeport intake, moved through East Bay Mud facilities to the Folsom South Canal, which we just discussed. Then from the Folsom South Canal, it would be pumped into the McCollum aqueducts and moved through the McCollum aqueducts into East Bay Mud's terminal reservoirs, basically in the Oakland Hills. The water would be stored there and then treated and delivered to us for deliveries on a daily basis that would begin on about June 1st and conclude around September 30th. So it would be for about 120 days, essentially. So this wheeling agreement includes all of the costs and what have you for the various conveyance, treatment, storage, and operation of the Freeport facilities. The resolution that you have in front of you, again, the recitals have been revised. I would like to point out to you that the resolution, in that you would be authorizing the general manager to execute the wheeling agreement and also authorizing the general manager to provide notice to East Bay Mud to begin startup procedures for the Freeport facilities. It takes a period of time for East Bay Mud to get Freeport up and ready to take water from the Sacramento River.
Comments? Questions? Joe?
Thank you, President Duarte. And just to round things out, once again, Zone 7 opposes this because we feel it's a violation of contract terms between Zone 7 and DSRC. Thank you.
Could I also add, because I forgot to mention this, Mike Paganini from East Bay Mud is in the audience tonight, if the board has any questions for him. He is the East Bay Mud Water Resources
Manager of Water Supply and Food.
Thank you very much. He's the person that does things like this for East Bay Mud, so we've been working very closely with Mike.
Any other questions or comments? Call for the motion to approve the resolution. With the revised.
I'll make a motion that we approve the revised recitals.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Two comments. All right, comment one is, if I understand correctly, this series of agreements that we have approved and are about to approve doesn't obligate us to move any water. We're setting the framework in which we could move water in about 6 or 7 weeks. Is that correct?
That's correct. This provides a mechanism to do it as a start the transfer.
Thank you very much. And then I just wanted to applaud Dan and East Bay Mud. These, the last page of this packet, these numbers are substantially better than the ones that we started out with. So thank you for your flexibility and thank you for negotiating well on behalf of the district. Thank you.
Rich? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board item I.E. The potential water transfer.
President Duarte, board members, the item in front of you is pretty much a summary of the financial impacts of this transaction on the district. We are buying water for future use, meaning it's going to span 2 fiscal years for us. So at the time we do complete this purchase and move it, we will be moving, if you will, cash to inventory being water for sale. The expense will then hit our financials, if you will, over the 2 years as we use the water and bring it into the system. It's really a financial accounting impact, if you will. The cost of the water in total is included in some of Dan's items earlier. Is about $2.2 million, and based on review of the financial statements, we do have sufficiently reserved to be able to make this purchase if it should be so desired. The economics on the transaction are also good. Now, while the cost of the water is more expensive than the water we are purchasing from Zone 7, we would be able to charge for the water to customers at the current rate, which is now $2.40 per 100 cubic feet of water. But please also consider that if we bring this water in, this is water that customers could consume, and that we would also be able to bill our distribution costs on top of that. So we would not be losing money, if you will, on the deal. The financial presentation that I included shows that there's quite a range depending on, what stage we're at and what tier the water is used at. But essentially, even at a stage 1 drought, we'd be pretty close to a break-even on the transaction when all billing rates were considered. So I think, in summary, for the transaction, economically, it makes sense. The last piece of the puzzle in this would be to give direction to the general manager through the resolution that's included, to actually direct staff to make payments that are required under each of the transactions, and to finally make any required budget adjustments that would be required as a result of the transaction. With that, if you have any specific questions, I would please answer.
Comments? Joe?
President Duarte, financial impacts are not going to be solely to DSRSD. The use of water from an outside source is the reason that the contract was put together as it is. It's probably going to be $1 million or more out of Zone 7's pocket that will probably have to be managed somehow by the rest of the retailers. We feel this is a ridiculous imposition on them, and we again oppose the action. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
All in approval of the item? As presented, no, discussion.
I'll second.
Then moved and seconded to approve item 5E, financial impact of water transfer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Immediately move to closed session, beginning of the meeting. Let's go to the